Welcome to In Your Element, the podcast that unlocks practical wisdom in higher education, where leadership meets real talk. I'm Brendan Hinkle, Manager of Solutions Engineering here at Element 451.
And I'm Daniela Norden, Element 451's Director of Customer Success and Engagement. Join us every other Thursday for discussions with everyday heroes using Element 451 in enrollment, marketing, and student success. We'll unlock the practical tips to help you make waves on your campus.
In Your Element is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below.
Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.
All right, we are live in your element here at Vegas for AMA, and I have the distinct privilege to interview again Michael Bettersworth, the CMO at Texas State Technical College. Michael, how's your AMA been, and how have you been doing yourself?
Well, it's good to see you again. AMA has been all right. This is my first time here coming to this show, and there are not many two-year colleges here, not many technical colleges, I noticed. So, but I've made some new friends and didn't lose too much at the blackjack table. That's good.
That's awesome. Yeah, first time at AMA, kind of my first time in Vegas. I was here back whenever I was in higher ed on the institutional side for a FSA conference. Didn't get the chance to enjoy Vegas much there, but you were telling me you got to go to the Sphere last night, and I've heard that's a pretty transformational experience. So how was that?
Man, that was emotive. Yeah, I went there with your boy Michael from Spark, and you and I went and checked that out and had a great show. I highly encourage checking it out. The cinematography in that, the sound design, definitely worth it. Got to check it out. But yeah, you're new to Vegas. Well, Vegas, I've spent more than a year of my life coming to conferences at Vegas, and I can't say it's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
But you got to get a show in whenever you come in. You got to get a good steak in, too.
Absolutely. I actually took your recommendation last night from a restaurant that you went to the first night, which was Brasserie B, Bobby Flay's restaurant here in Caesars.
Yeah.
And I know you got steak, but I was tempted by the whole lobster frites. Dude, incredible.
Living well.
It was incredible. So, you know what, since we're at AMA, I know we were talking about this in a little bit, but trends, right? I know that we've kind of come here and you look at trends of schools and trends for the market and what's going on. And you were sharing with me some interesting trends that you've been noticing. And I'd love to get kind of insight on what those trends are that you've been seeing and what you've been talking to schools here about too.
So, yeah, the trends that, we just finished the fall recruiting cycle. And the numbers are preliminary, but higher education saw a slight increase, but the numbers that stand out on that are the new students. So the new student numbers for higher ed declined 5%. For the four-year institutions, they declined 8.5%.
Wow.
So this is not good. And we're in what's missing from this conference, I would say, it has not come up much, is the tumult that's happening in this sector. We have institutions closing at a rate of 1 per week right now.
Wow.
And last year it was 1 every other week. But if we go back to 2004 to 2020, 12,000 higher education institutions closed.
Wow.
And most of that was financial trouble. Some of that was 80% of those were for profits. But the public are not immune to these market forces. So, and if you're a well-endowed private with or a brand of a four-year that people are beating down your door and you've got international students coming in, you're going to be okay probably. But what's not happening at this conference is a real, I think, frank conversation about the viability of certain program offerings and what these institutions are going to be doing within their cultures to adjust them, because people are voting with their feet.
Yep. Yeah. That's a staggering stat to go from every other to every week for a closing institution, and that's just wild. Whenever you look at the solution to that kind of problem, I know we kind of discussed this and kind of the viewpoint certain institutions have had against them, but what are the type of solutions that you think people should be looking at as you dug into this that's come across?
I mean, it's going to vary by institution. Higher education is not a monolith.
Right.
You've got, you've got so many different kinds of institutions, different situations. But I think in overall, just the basic forces of supply and demand are here, unless you have some kind of gold subsidy or endowment, like I mentioned, that's going to protect you from those forces. So what are people interested in? And we have to, I think, appreciate there is a value. I have liberal arts degrees. So this debate about if liberal arts and humanities aren't valuable isn't it. But there are institutions that have vibrant liberal arts programs that have healthy enrollment, healthy tuition, and healthy finances. But they've kept it in reason. They've kept it in and good defaults, minimal default rates. Their debt ratios are great for their students. I've just met a president in Santa Fe. We were just talking about that, Tom, and they're doing well. And that institution's got a storied history. It's master's and a PhD in humanities. But if your institution has programs with 3 or 4 or 5 new students coming in, that are small, and you're still keeping those programs around, that's a problem because the P&L for that's probably not going to work. Now, you've also got to deal with the culture of that institution. What are you dealing with? I mean, do you have a functioning relationship and leadership with your faculty senate or with tenure or with labor unions? Is that a healthy relationship where people can have tough conversations about some of these offerings, or is it dysfunctional? Is it entrenchment? I think the 2-year colleges, you've got property taxes and they're going up. They're subsidizing most of that, but there's a lot of states that are moving towards questioning the property tax burden. Texas, the property tax, about $3 billion for the 2-year college sector in property taxes. Well, if the enrollments are going down or flattening and the property valuations are going up, that's a pretty sweet deal for the institution, but the taxpayers' return on that is getting a little bit sketch.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be more pressure on looking towards outcomes. So are your programs, particularly those that are workforce oriented, leading towards great placement rates and great earnings and low debt ratios? If that's happening, then I think you're in a good position. But if you've got programs that are maybe popular but not relevant to the labor market, I think you got some questions to ask. In particular, if you're positioning those that they result in employment, but the employment's not bountiful, it's not prosperous, it's not sustainable. Those kinds of programs, you're skirting on some consumer protection kinds of topics there. So tough questions, but there are examples and there is leadership that can navigate through these waters. The enrollment cliff is coming also, 2027, it's already here.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see those declines. So this is not going to improve, but those demographic forces are very powerful. And then we're also going to have some exiting of migration with the new administration here. There's a portion of undocumented that are enrollees at many of these institutions as well, and so that population is also going to likely see a start decline. Boy, it's time to get real.
Yeah. And it's the intentionality, right? The focus on outcomes that I think is so important. And one of the things that I saw whenever I was in higher ed on the institutional side prior to coming over to Element 451 was the fact that I was doing financial aid at one of these for-profit institutions and being part of a degree for a student that was a 6-figure degree, and they were coming out and they were being a line chef and making minimum wage, right? So the outcome for that student, the consumer protection that you're speaking of, it wasn't there. But you know what? There was no visibility to that. And so that's where this generation that's coming up, there's a focal point on that because there is a need for outcomes to be honestly what you guys are offering, right? The relationships that you've built with the companies that you work with for your institution, with companies like Tesla, like those that type of intentionality of showcasing that, communicating that, providing visibility, that's going to be a huge differentiator in the market. But how do you do that, right? And what is the strategic approach to putting that in front of people?
Yeah. Well, and again, mission of the institution matters. So if I can set aside from our higher education sector and focus on those programs that are really workforce oriented, which is a unique, part. I don't want to make over generalizations. You got to talk to employers first. I mean, the best real-time labor market data doesn't come out of a browser. It comes out of talking with employers and talking with the leaders in your community first. That's it. And then you got to have expert faculty, which means you got to have compensation for those faculty that's competitive with the market. You can't just have flat kinds of incoming, it's your first year teaching here and everybody starts out at this flat wage. If you're trying to compete leading industrial technicians that can make 6 figures, handedly in the market, Yeah, you're not climbing up a pole, you're not outside, you have more security, maybe you're inside. There are some trade-offs, but there are some financial realities to doing this that are huge. And I think you have to make some different choices in your program catalog. If you've got program catalog that doesn't have a clear P&L, and it's a conflict. You need a profitable amount of cash flow coming in to support that operation, that business unit. But you also need students that are coming out and that they're realizing a profitable gain as well for their time and investment. So you check those two boxes, start there. If you have programs that don't check those two boxes, time to ask some tough questions.
Yeah.
Right. First of all, is the program targeting an occupation that has market relevance? Right. And is the salary of that in the range that it needs to be? If your program is at graduating students at the lowest tier or lowest starting wage compared to others, well, this is a program quality issue. It's either the relationship with employers aren't there, or your program's competencies and learning outcomes are not a market aligned, or some other kind of cultural element, perhaps. But it's not complicated, but it does take deliberate commitment, I think, to some core principles of accountability, and then the institutional will to move. We closed 20 programs. 18 of them in 2018, and 2 more just recently, because the placement and earnings weren't there, or we had enrollment that just didn't make the business case for it. Closing programs is real expensive.
Yep.
You got to do teach outs or scholarships or change majors. It's a huge burden, but it's the right thing to do in the long-term economic model. So we used to have 78 program areas. Now we're down to 48, but we're turning some more back on as we focus on growth. So I think and then the base finances, what's your financial model? The contact hour model that most of higher education operates on is funding activity. It's funding enrollment. It's not funding outcomes. So, we're lucky, we're blessed, TSTC indexes. We moved that funding formula in 2012, 2013 from contact hours to the earnings and placements of our students. You heard me talk about it.
Yeah.
Since doing that, our appropriations are up 168% this next session. And our student wages over that period are up 28%, inflation adjusted. So we've had tremendous increase of the student starting wage. We've had great, our tuition revenues up 91%. Okay, we just had a 20-something% increase in tuition revenue this fall, the last fall. So we're in a really good financial state, but it took some time. Yeah. We had some folks that didn't want to go along on the ride. Yeah. Many of them aren't with us anymore. Yeah. Right. We did some separations on that. You had to get on board or get off the boat, start rowing. And there's been some great leadership and some great partners and some real trauma through all of this 23-year history I've been at the place. But we're happy to share. We've been testifying in other state legislatures. We host delegations from other colleges to talk about it. We talk to other chancellors and presidents about the internal change management strategies around this, and are always open with our brothers and sisters in higher ed to be collegial and share what we can. Trying not to gloat. We've got a lot of empathy for these institutions that are well-meaning. Yeah. They're trying. Everybody got into this to help peeps. Yeah. Most. You were at a for-profit institution. You still need to take a shower, probably. But but most of the people here, we're well-meaning, public servants, trying to do well, trying to do good for people. We're sectors under a real situation. Yeah. And these numbers are going to get tougher and tougher, and they're going to require real strong leadership.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And, one of the things that, I take away from that is you have to be able to make hard decisions. Change is ever constant, and it happens, and most places are resistant to it. So it's very important to take a look at what you're doing, take inventory constantly, and be willing to know, I'm going to have to make some hard decisions. I'm going to have to be willing to change. And that's a constant process.
Yeah. I will say this. I think let me bring it back to Element. You're talking about a product here. Let me talk about it for a second. I know you were about to. I just cut you off. But Element, okay. The customer experience of enrollment is going to matter more than it ever has before. Yeah. The prior application processes, and I'll name some names here, the application process that has 8 pages, that isn't mobile friendly, that uses cryptic language, are you a full or part-time student? Folks, a first-generation student doesn't know what that means, and you just scared the hell out of them. Yeah. We got to use language that's approachable, that's easy, and it needs to be, not a barrier to entry. If you're, our abandonment rate on our prior application, which was a fill in the blank company, was a 75% abandonment rate. That means we did all the marketing, all the messaging, got them there, they clicked apply. I've said this before, 75% did not click submit. That's a problem. We switched to Element, and we're in now an 80 to 90% conversion rate. They click start, 80 to 90% click submit. It's fantastic. And now we're working down the funnel. The next part is that enrollment process. And that's I know you got the Student Hub thing coming out, right? You did a webinar on that. We're super excited about that. The reason is we drag the student through a horrible customer journey from one SaaS vendor to another SaaS vendor. So now we got this great application experience. That's good. Cool. Microsites, dashboards. That's awesome. Then they got to get through the enrollment process. Oh, that can be rather trepidatious. So have an API interconnects to that enrollment process, but using the Student Hub so we can, in a language of visual design and clear language communication, that we can move and change things. That is a safety blanket. It's a cozy place for that new student. Maybe still hadn't stepped on our campus. And we can create that customer and user experience that's delightful. Yeah. And we can give clear information about where exactly you are in that process. And by the way, while they're waiting to come to class, we know you're going to be in that pilot program or the nursing program. We can serve up content like this. This is what we have planned for it. Hey, I'm a student. I just went through this nursing program that you're about to enter. Here's everything I wish I knew before I started. We can pipe in content, that program-specific content for that user, real nice customization. We can introduce them to employers before they've even stepped on campus. We can start talking about career prep before they've entered the campus, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that while they're in that holding pattern, before they even walk on campus, we can really create a culture and a welcome mat, before they even get here. Guarantee you our conversions. I guarantee you we're going to hold those students here because they're not going to get that from other institutions. They're not going to get that customer experience from a lazy approach towards, well, you're lucky if you get in. Yeah. That kind of attitude, So that's going to be that's another example beyond your product mix, how you handle that customer interaction. I use the term customer. I use the term customer experience. These are relevant concepts.
Can't be afraid of customers.
You can't be afraid of it. And let me tell you, enrollment folks, y'all are in a tough pickle because who owns this? Does IT own customer experience? Well, I hope not. It's not really their bag, And enrollment folks, I got to tell you, you're kind of similar, very process oriented. And the marketing folks, well, they're over here on the website. They don't typically get into your enrollment processes. Y'all better partner up. And you better get a customer experience, high level of empathy throughout that group to make these changes. It's going to require a lot of partnership. Yes. And it's going to require surrendering a little bit of territory, IT and enrollment and marketing. You're going to have to work together.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you absolutely. I was getting ready to lead into the element piece and you just, no, dude, that was perfect. I didn't even have to ask the right questions. You just gave everything I was going to ask. So, man, Michael, I always have such a joy talking to you and being able to even meet face-to-face at these conferences. So thank you so much. I hope you have I know you're traveling today. Yeah. So I hope you have a great rest of the AMA. I'm so excited to continue to see what TSTC does with Element in the visionary mind that you have that you put on and showcase for me every time we talk. I just love to see the vision that you have and how you can take Element and now put that vision into practice. So thanks so much. And yeah, we'll be in touch. We'll talk soon.
All right, Brandon, we really thanks to everybody at Element and Vegas out, cue the music.
In Your Element is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too.
Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional.
Our shows help higher ed marketers and enrollment professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Mallory Wilsey, Artis Kadu, Maya Demishkovich, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed.
Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.